My mother died 2 weeks after my ninth birthday. Car accident on a 79 just outside of Morgantown. Wrong place, wrong time, lights out. After the funeral, my dad sat on the edge of my bed for maybe 5 minutes, said he'd be figuring some stuff out. Then he was gone. I didn't see him again for almost 2 years. My name's Nathan Hartman. I'm 32 now, from Bridgeport, West Virginia. It was my grandpa, Calvin Hartman, who picked me up from school the week after Mom died, brought me home in his rusted-out GMC, fed me hot dogs and canned chili, and didn't ask a damn thing about my feelings. He just gave me space and showed up the next day, then the next, and the next. Before we start, how's your day going and where are you joining from? Calvin was old school, crew cut, calloused hands, drank his coffee black, no sugar, no bullshit. He was the founder of Hartman Roofing and Lumber, built it from scratch in the late 70s. Everyone in town respected him. Even the ones who hated him respected him. He worked 6 days a week, wore the same brown boots for 20 years, and showed up to my parent-teacher conferences like he owned the place. Because in his mind, he kinda did. My dad, Gerald, he worked at the company too, but not like Calvin. Gerald had no edge, no hunger. I think he always felt like the business was owed to him just for being born. He never talked about building anything, just inheriting it. I remember hearing him once at a cookout, laughing with his buddies, saying, "One day this'll all be mine." Can't wait to fire half the staff. Calvin heard him. Didn't say a word, just kept flipping burgers like he hadn't. I spent most of my teen years watching that contrast play out. Calvin pouring into me, showing me how to repair tools, how to talk to customers, how to take pride in your damn work. And Gerald treated me like a house guest, like I was some chore left behind after Mom died. When I graduated high school, I tried to bridge the gap, enrolled in the same trade college Gerald went to, hoping maybe we'd finally have something to talk about. I came home that first semester excited, handed him one of my welding projects. He looked at it for maybe 2 seconds and said, "Huh, guess they'll let anyone in these days." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was the only way I knew how to keep from breaking something. Calvin started slowing down just before his 80th birthday. At first, it was small stuff, taking the stairs slower, eating less, sleeping more. Then he collapsed in the backyard, pulling weeds. Diagnosis: congestive heart failure. I moved back in the next week, set up my laptop in the old den, cleared off a table for meds, got a baby monitor from Walmart so I could hear him at night. He fought it for a while, kept saying, "Don't turn this place into a damn hospital." But the truth hit fast. Within a month, he couldn't go more than a few steps without needing to sit down. Gerald started showing up around then, out of nowhere, acting like family. He brought bottles of expensive wine, joked about winding down the empire, started tossing around words like succession and legacy. He'd corner Calvin on the porch and talk contracts. Not once did he ask how his own father was feeling. I'd walk in with Calvin's tea and find Gerald mid-pitch, waving paperwork around. Calvin would just look at me and nod like, "You see this too, right?" That nod said everything. He knew what Gerald was doing. Hell, he'd known for years. One night, after Gerald left, Calvin was sitting in his recliner, blanket over his legs, just staring at the TV on mute. He said, "Call Marvin." "Dillard?" I asked. "Your lawyer?" He nodded. "Tell him to bring the whole damn folder." Marvin Dillard had been with Calvin for over 40 years. They weren't just lawyer and client, they were friends. The kind of friends who didn't need to say much to get their point across. 2 days later, Marvin came over with a leather briefcase and a stack of manila envelopes. Calvin didn't let me in the room, just waved me off and closed the door behind them. They were in there for over 4 hours. I sat in the kitchen listening to the slow hum of their voices through the wall. No yelling, no anger, just quiet, calm planning. When Marvin left, Calvin was already half asleep in his chair. I started helping him up the stairs, and halfway there, he stopped, held onto the railing, and said, "You don't need to worry about what comes next, Nate. I've made sure of it. I wanted to ask what he meant, but he looked so peaceful in that moment, I didn't. A few weeks went by. Calvin's appetite dropped off. His breath got shallow. We stopped trying to pretend like he was going to recover. Gerald kept circling. He came by more often, sometimes twice a day, always with his sales pitch smile. One day he brought a binder labeled Estate Prep. Another time, he tried to get Calvin to sign a digital doc on an iPad while the old man could barely keep his eyes open. I cut in that time, took the iPad out of his hands and said, "Not today." Gerald gave me this fake laugh, like I was being dramatic. "Just tying up loose ends." "Yeah," I said. "Funny how the only loose ends you care about are the ones tied to money." Calvin heard it too, smiled at me behind Gerald's back and winked. That was the last time Gerald tried anything in front of me. From then on, I started noticing things. How Calvin would ask me to read his mail out loud, or check his medicine schedule, things he didn't need help with before. It was like he was walking me into a role I didn't even know I was training for. One night, he asked me to sit with him on the back porch. We bundled up in blankets. It was cold, late September. He looked over the yard, then up at the house, and said, "Built this from nothing. Every damn brick I know," I said. He turned toward me. "Don't let anyone tear it apart." "I won't." He nodded. "Good, because your dad, he doesn't get it." He never did. I didn't say anything, just listened. Then Calvin added, "When I go, it's gonna bring out the worst in him. But you stay grounded. You know who you are. He's never had that." We sat there another hour, barely talking. Later that night, when I tucked him in, he grabbed my wrist and said, "You're the one I trust. Don't forget that I didn't." Calvin died the next morning. I was holding his hand when it happened. His fingers were cold and dry, but his grip was still there, even in the last few seconds. No machines, no ambulance. Just me and him in that quiet room as the sun came through the blinds. It was calm, honest. The kind of ending most people don't get. Gerald showed up an hour later in a three-piece suit and a Bluetooth in his ear. No, "How are you holding up?" No, "Was he in pain?" Nothing. He stepped over the threshold, looked around like he was walking into a business meeting, and said, "I'll need access to the desk. Company files might be in there." Then he disappeared into Calvin's office and started pulling out drawers. I stood in the hallway watching him dig like a raccoon in a trash can. Didn't say a word. The funeral was 4 days later. St. Mary's Church was packed. People from the company, from town, even old union guys Calvin hadn't spoken to in years. They came because they respected him, not because they were expected to. Gerald walked up to the pulpit in a navy suit, holding a printed speech. He started talking about strategic growth, market presence, and honoring Calvin's entrepreneurial vision, like he was pitching investors instead of burying his own father. I could see heads turning, confused looks. No mention of who Calvin was, no mention of the man behind the business. Then it was my turn. I walked up, pulled a crumpled note card from my pocket and said, "Calvin Hartman taught me how to use a power drill before I knew how to tie a tie. He taught me what it meant to take pride in your work, to show up early and leave late. Not because anyone's watching, but because you are." I paused and scanned the room. People leaned in. He made time for people. He fixed old radios on Sundays, not because they needed fixing, but because he liked seeing how things worked. That's what he did with me. He took something broken and stayed with it long enough to make it better. When I stepped down, I could feel people clapping without sound. That quiet kind of respect that doesn't need noise. After the service, Marvin Dillard came up to me in the parking lot. He looked tired, but solid like always. Slipped a card into my jacket pocket and said, "Marvin wants to go over some paperwork soon. He'll call you." I nodded. He walked off without another word. That night, I was in the kitchen making coffee when Gerald came in, glass of scotch in hand. He leaned against the counter like he owned the place. "You should probably start packing." I didn't answer. He sipped his drink. "House goes to the air." "That's me now." "You sure about that?" I asked. He gave a smug half laugh. Marvin's just going through the motions. Everything's already set. I'm the only blood son. That's how this stuff works. I looked him dead in the eye. Then why are you so nervous? I'm not, he said, but his voice cracked on the second word. He turned and walked off without another word, scotch still in hand. I stayed in the kitchen another hour, watching the coffee go cold. That house didn't feel like a home anymore, not without Calvin, and sure as hell not, with Gerald circling like he already had the keys in his pocket. Still, I wasn't going anywhere until Marvin said I had to. And something in the way he'd handed me that card told me I should be ready. I started packing the next morning, just the essentials, some clothes, tools, the cigar box where Calvin kept old photos. I didn't know where I was going yet, but I figured I'd have at least a couple days to figure it out. Then I heard the knock. 2 guys in black polo shirts stood at the front door, mid-40s, built like ex-cops, not smiling. You Nathan Hartman? One asked. Yeah. We've been hired by Gerald Hartman. We're here to secure the property. I blinked. Secure it from what? Gerald came in behind them, like he'd been waiting for his cue. Slacks, sweater vest, holding a damn clipboard like he was managing a construction site. This isn't your house anymore, Nate, he said. You have no legal standing here. I was still living here when he passed. You were a guest, he snapped. You were useful when your grandpa needed a nurse. That chapter's closed, I laughed. Just one sharp, bitter exhale. This is low. Even for you, he didn't even flinch. Take your things and go. We're changing the locks. The guard stepped in behind him like this was protocol. I grabbed 2 suitcases and a box of framed pictures from the hallway. No time to check drawers or finish packing the rest. They were already unscrewing the deadbolt while I stood there with my keys still in my pocket. Outside, the air was cold. My breath came out in short puffs. I looked back once before stepping off the porch. Gerald didn't look at me. He was too busy talking to one of the guards about alarm codes. I didn't say goodbye. I drove to a cheap motel by the highway, the kind of place where the TV remote's sticky and the towels feel like sandpaper. Paid cash. Told the front desk I'd only need a couple nights. I lied. That first night was brutal. The room smelled like mildew and burnt coffee. I sat on the edge of the bed with the box of pictures in my lap and couldn't decide whether I wanted to punch something or just fall apart. Grief doesn't hit all at once. It comes in waves. The first one was about Calvin. The second was realizing I had no backup, no family, just whatever I could carry, and the number of a lawyer I wasn't sure I could trust. I called my buddy Wayne around midnight. You good? He asked when he picked up. Not even close. Got a couch? Always. I showed up at his place the next morning, small duplex off Harrison Street. He cleared out space in the garage for my stuff and handed me a beer before noon. Stay as long as you need, he said. No pressure. Wayne wasn't the emotional type, but that meant more to me than anything Gerald had said in years. I was halfway through that beer when my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, then it rang again. Same number, I picked up. Yeah? A woman's voice. Professional, clear. Hi, Mr. Hartman. This is Jennifer calling on behalf of Mr. Marvin Dillard. I sat up straight. He'd like to meet with you today. It's urgent. What time? Can you be at his office by 4? I looked at the clock. It was 3:06. I'm on my way. I parked outside Marvin Dillard's office with 1 minute to spare. Downtown Clarksburg. Red brick building, 2nd floor. Plaque by the door that looked like it hadn't been polished since the 80s. I didn't bother fixing my hair or tucking in my shirt. I wasn't there to impress anybody. Marvin opened the door himself. Same old charcoal suit, thin tie, and those sharp eyes that always looked like they were 5 moves ahead. He didn't waste time. Come in, Nathan. I stepped inside. Dark wood, thick carpet, the smell of old paper and stale coffee. He shut the door behind us and walked straight to his desk. You holding up? He asked without looking at me. I've been better. He nodded. Sit down. He opened a drawer, pulled out a thick brown envelope, and slid it across the desk toward me. Then he opened a second folder, not as thick, labeled Executed Copy. "This," he said, tapping the thinner one, "is what your father believes is the final will." Then he tapped the larger envelope. "And this is the actual one, the full version. Your grandfather called me in a few weeks ago. He made adjustments. I opened it, hands a little shaky. First page looked like any other legal document. Then I hit the clause. Gerald Hartman inherits all company shares and residential property only under the condition that he houses and supports Nathan Hartman indefinitely in the family home. Any breach of that condition immediately voids inheritance and transfers full rights to Nathan Hartman." I read it twice before looking up. "He kicked me out less than 24 hours after the funeral," Marvin nodded, "which voids the terms. Your grandfather anticipated he might do exactly that. So this was a test?" Marvin leaned back in his chair, folding his hands. "He trusted you, Nathan. And he knew Gerald's pattern. This clause was deliberate." I swallowed hard. "So what now?" "Now," Marvin said, standing, "you're the legal owner of Hartman Roofing and Lumber, and the house your father just had you thrown out of." I didn't know what to say. My mind jumped from the motel room to Wayne's garage to the last night Calvin and I talked. Every word he said suddenly clicked into place. "He really knew," I muttered. "He knew it would go down like this." Marvin gave the smallest nod. "He didn't want you to worry." He turned, opened another drawer, and pulled out a business card. "Security company's meeting you at the house at 5 to change the locks back. Their guy's name is Frank. Good people, union guys." I stared at the card. My fingers felt numb holding it. "I'm supposed to just walk in there and take it?" Marvin tilted his head. "You're not taking anything. It's already yours." He walked me to the door, then paused. "One more thing." I looked at him. "You'll be meeting with the board soon." I'd prepare. He didn't say how, just shut the door behind me like we were done. I pulled up to the house at 5 sharp. The security van was already parked at the curb, 2 guys inside, both in gray uniforms, waiting for my go. One of them, the driver, stepped out and gave me a nod. "Frank," he said, holding out his hand, "you must be Nathan." I shook it. "Yeah, you ready?" He gave a small grin. "Just say the word." Gerald's silver Mercedes was still in the driveway. Same spot it had been parked when he kicked me out. I didn't bother knocking. I opened the front door with the key Marvin had passed to me years ago, one Calvin never took back. Gerald was in the living room on his laptop, drink in hand, still pretending he ran the world. He looked up and frowned when he saw me. "What the hell are you doing here?" I didn't raise my voice, didn't step forward, just held out the folder Marvin gave me. "There's been a change," I said. "You violated the will." He scoffed and stood up. "This again? Nathan, grow up. You don't get to rewrite legal documents just because you're mad." I walked closer, pulled out the copy of the final will, and tapped the page with the clause. "Read it. Slowly. Then look at the date and the signatures." He glanced at it, eyes scanning the lines. His mouth opened to say something, then shut again. He looked up, jaw clenched. "You're lying?" "Nope. This came straight from Marvin. Executed, filed, and witnessed." The security guys came in behind me. One went straight to the front door and pulled out a new lock set. The other started upstairs to do the same on the back entrance. "What the hell is this?" Gerald snapped. "You bringing goons now?" "They're here to do what you had done to me," I said. "Except I'm not locking you out of your own house. I'm locking you out of mine." He stood frozen, hands still half lifted from, when he tried to wave me off. For the first time, he didn't have anything slick to say. No fake charm, no clipboard, just silence. I looked him dead in the eye. "You had everything. All you had to do was show basic decency. You blew it in one day." He didn't argue, didn't scream. He just walked past me, grabbed his coat, and stepped out the front door without saying a word. The Mercedes roared to life. then peeled down the street like he couldn't get away fast enough. Frank gave a low whistle. That was cleaner than I expected. Yeah, I said. He's not used to consequences. We finished the lock change in under 30 minutes. The house felt quiet, different. Not just because he was gone, but because it finally felt like mine again. That night, I stood in the doorway of my old bedroom. Same posters on the wall, same squeaky floorboard near the window. I sat down on the edge of the bed and pulled Calvin's cigar box out of my bag. Inside was a set of keys he gave me at 19. Just in case, he'd said back then. I'd forgotten all about them. I held them in my hand, real tight, not out of anger, just to feel the weight of it. Then I laid back on the pillow, still dressed, keys resting on my chest. And for the first time in weeks, I slept straight through the night. The next morning, I walked back into Marvin's office. Same desk, same heavy smell of paper and dust. Only difference was Gerald was already there, clean-shaven, fresh suit, legs crossed like he was getting ready for a magazine interview. Sitting next to him was a guy in a slick gray suit with cufflinks and a tablet. Some big city lawyer he probably flew in last minute. Gerald gave me a tight smile like nothing had happened. I didn't smile back. Marvin came in, sat down, and got straight to business. I've prepared documentation for both parties, he said. But before we get into that, Calvin left behind 2 messages. One for each of you. Gerald's lawyer shifted. Messages as in legal instructions? No, Marvin said calmly. Just truths. He hit play on a small remote. First video popped up on the flat screen behind his desk. It was Calvin, sitting in the den, oxygen tube under his nose, voice thin but steady. Gerald, he said, you spent your whole life chasing money and titles. I gave you opportunity after opportunity, not because you earned it, but because you were my son. And what did you do? You turned your back on your own boy the moment it cost you something. Gerald sat up straighter. His lawyer reached for a pen but didn't speak. I built this business from nothing, but it wasn't just about shingles and trucks. It was about people, legacy. You never got that. And now you're left with neither family nor fortune. That was your choice. The screen cut to black. Gerald looked like he wanted to say something, but didn't. Then Marvin clicked again. My face showed up next. Calvin had recorded a separate message for me. His tone shifted, softer, warmer. Nate, if you're seeing this, it means things went how I figured they would. I'm sorry it had to play out like this, but I needed you to see who he really is when no one's watching. He took a shaky breath, then continued. I'm proud of you. The man you've become. You lead with heart, but don't mistake that for weakness. This family doesn't need another smooth talker. It needs someone who does what's right, even when it's hard. Then his voice got firm. And don't let him back in unless he earns it. I mean that. This world's got too many second chances given away to people who don't change. The screen went dark again. No one spoke for a solid 30 seconds. You could have heard a pin drop. Then Gerald cleared his throat. Look, I get it. He was angry. He wanted to teach me a lesson. Fine. But Nate, we don't have to do this like enemies. We could work together. You've got the title now, sure. But I've got the experience. I looked right at him. Experience doing what, exactly? Waiting for someone else to die so you can cash in? He raised a hand. That's not fair. No, I cut him off. What's not fair is you throwing me out like garbage and now sitting here pretending you care. Gerald leaned forward. I'm trying to fix things. Then start by shutting up and listening. He blinked, leaned back. There is a path back, I said, but it's not through some fake partnership or fancy lawyer. It's through showing up, over time, not with words, with action. His jaw tightened, but he nodded. Marvin closed the folder and stood. Then we're done here for today. I walked out first, didn't look back. I didn't know the first damn thing about running a business. I knew roofing, how to load a truck, tear off a 3-tab, patch flashing, but balance sheets, payroll, vendor negotiations, that was all foreign. Still, I showed up at 6:30 a.m. the next day and didn't miss a morning after that. Most of the crew didn't say much at first. The office staff kept it polite. The warehouse guys kept their distance, especially the old guard, the ones who'd been around since my dad had a title. I could feel their eyes on me, waiting to see if I'd fall flat on my face. So, I did the only thing I knew how to do. I asked questions. I listened. I sat in the break room and ate cold sandwiches with the crew, walked job sites in steel-toe boots, and wrote notes in a legal pad Calvin left in the bottom drawer of his desk. Every time I hit a wall, I'd ask myself, what would Calvin do? And then I'd do that. By the third week, I'd memorized the names of all 32 employees. I started making calls directly to clients, not hiding behind email. I made mistakes, but I owned them. No passing the buck. No hiding behind titles. One afternoon, I found a dusty binder buried in Calvin's filing cabinet labeled Youth Trades Program, Draft. Inside were outlines, budgets, even handwritten notes about partnering with the local high school. Calvin had planned it years ago, but never launched it. So I did. I pitched it to the board, got half-hearted nods, then pulled in Mr. DeWitt, the old shop teacher at Bridgeport High. Told him I wanted juniors and seniors who were hungry to work, not afraid to sweat. 2 weeks later, we had 5 kids shadowing on the yard. It gave the place energy. Gave me something that actually felt forward-facing, not just survival. Then Gerald started showing up again. First, it was gifts. Bottles of wine, new cufflinks, a Rolex catalog he just happened to find laying around. I told him no thanks. Next came the guilt. He'd stop by the office and pull the "I miss how things used to be" line. Said he'd made mistakes, that Calvin would have wanted us to rebuild. I let him talk, didn't say much back, and when that didn't work, he pushed harder, offered to consult on the company. Said he had connections I could never buy. I told him, flat out, "You haven't earned anything yet." He looked like he wanted to argue, but I didn't give him the space. I wasn't shutting the door, but I wasn't opening it either, not until he stopped performing and started proving. 6 months in, we landed the county contract. Biggest one in the company's history, full roofing and materials package for 3 government buildings and a school renovation. We'd outbid 3 national competitors and beat them on turnaround time. Calvin had chased that contract for years. Gerald too. Only difference? I actually got it. Press showed up for the announcement. County reps brought in a photographer. I wore a clean shirt, wiped the dust off my boots, and stood in front of the Hartman Roofing and Lumber sign with my foreman and the high school trainees. And then Gerald pulled into the lot. Press slacks, sunglasses, and a smirk like he belonged. He slid into the photos without asking, stood beside me like we were co-founders, said all the right things. The company's always been family-led. We're proud of our legacy, a new chapter built on strong roots. I didn't stop him, not there, not in front of the cameras, but once the shutters stopped clicking and the handshakes were over, I pulled him aside. "This isn't your comeback tour," I said. "This is Calvin's legacy. You didn't build this. You didn't earn it. Don't pretend you did." He raised his hands like he was surrendering. All right. Just trying to support the brand." I walked off, let him stand there with nothing else to say. That night, he showed up at the house. No Mercedes, no lawyers, no wine bottle under his arm. Just him. He knocked and waited. I opened the door and didn't say anything. "I didn't know how to be a father," he said. I stepped back and let him in. We sat in the kitchen. No food, no music. Just the hum of the fridge and 2 mugs of plain black coffee between us. He kept his hands on the table. Didn't fidget. Didn't look for the angle. "I thought business was the only thing that mattered," he said. "Thought if I could just get what Dad built, everything else would fall into place." I listened. Let the silence stretch. He stared down at his coffee. But it didn't. I lost him. And I damn near lost you. He looked up, eyes bloodshot. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just... He stopped himself. I just wanted to say it out loud. I leaned back in the chair, felt the weight of every screwed-up year between us. I'm not giving you a clean slate, I said. Calvin left a door open, but it's not automatic. He nodded, didn't try to argue. You want a seat at the table? I said. You show up. You put in the work, and you don't expect a damn thing in return. I can do that, he said. We'll see. I stood up and walked him to the door. This time, he didn't try to hug me. He just nodded once, stepped out into the night, and shut the door behind him. 1 year later, I stood at Calvin's grave with a coffee in one hand and a toolbox in the other. The morning was quiet, sky still gray, the kind of West Virginia chill that sat low in your chest. I didn't bring flowers. Calvin would have hated that. I brought tools because there was a loose corner on his headstone plaque that needed tightening. The company was thriving. We had more contracts than crews. That county project opened every door we knocked on. The trade program, full. Kids were graduating and going straight to jobs. Some were buying their mom's groceries with money they earned swinging hammers. Calvin would have smiled at that. Gerald sat on the advisory board now. No votes, no say in day-to-day. But he showed up. He listened. He only spoke when asked. And when he called me son again, it didn't sound like a trick. It sounded like maybe he finally meant it. I didn't forget what he did. I never will. But I also didn't drag it around like a weight. Calvin wouldn't have wanted that. I rebuilt my life from nothing. The motel, the eviction, those cold nights with nothing but a box of photos and a busted heart. It all felt like someone else's story now. It wasn't the money that changed things. It was the meaning, the ownership, the work that mattered. Calvin gave me that. Not just in his will, but in his time. In the way he taught me to carry myself. In the way he made me feel like I wasn't just some burden he got stuck with, but someone worth investing in. I kneeled down and tightened the bolt on the plaque. Still holding everything down, old man, I said quietly, just like you taught me. I stayed there for a minute longer. No tears, no drama, just a man and his roots. As I turned to leave, I looked back once. Not for closure, for fuel. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't yelling or fighting or dragging someone through the mud. Sometimes the best revenge is staying standing, taking the thing they tried to bury and building it better than they ever could have imagined, and never handing it back.